We've got some very interesting things to take a look at and talk about in today's video involving the New York Rangers and their game against the Dallas Stars the other night, and definitely a few interesting things to kind of take from that game, as well as some very interesting and kind of important maybe kind of rumors / news that we have kind of gotten about the New York Rangers, kind of certain player they seem to be targeting and wanting to kind of trade for. There are some kind of rumors on what may need to be kind of involved on the Rangers end to kind of make that deal actually end up kind of coming to fruition and actually end up kind of going through. So in today's video, we're going to talk about that Dallas game and the trade news right now. So starting off here, let's begin with the Dallas Stars game there against the Rangers and kind of what happened in that game that I kind of wanted to touch on. And other than it being another New York Rangers loss there, at least this time, the Rangers getting a point there with that 5-4 overtime loss against the Dallas Stars after, unfortunately going up 3-0 in the game, obviously allowing that comeback there to the Stars, and then them, winning it in overtime is not the greatest thing for this team, but at least there was a point, you could say that was gotten there for the Rangers. But the main parts that I kind of wanted to talk about in today's video was K'Andre Miller and Filip Chytil. Now, first off, with the Filip Chytil situation there, it's not good news at all. It is another upper body injury that he ended up leaving the game the other night against the Stars there. I believe it was in the second period. So that's really not great there. Or at least most of us know that he has suffered quite a few concussions / upper body injuries over his hockey career so far, and with how young he is, and they just continue to seem to kind of come along here. And, every once in a while, he just does seem to kind of get injured and get these upper body injuries, which is really not a good thing at all, especially when it comes to the head kind of stuff there and the head trauma and injuries and all that kind of stuff. That can be very serious stuff. And obviously, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to try and act like one, but if we're being honest here, when you see how consistently he keeps getting these upper body injuries and continuously has to miss time, away from this team and has to, leave games early and stuff like that, it really does not look good for his long-term future as an NHLer. Now, I definitely want to see him, have a great long pro hockey career and be a great player for this organization and help us, kind of get back on track towards possibly winning a Stanley Cup. And, he's been a part of this team for a while now, but with these kind of upper body injuries / concussions kind of consistently coming, you really do kind of have to wonder, how much longer does he potentially have if these continue to just kind of keep coming and coming and coming, every few months, because that's kind of what it seems like at this point. So we'll have to wait and see, hopefully can have a good kind of healthy rest of the season here, but at this point, you really can't, be too expecting of that. So in my opinion, this really is just not a good situation at all for the New York Rangers, but also, Filip Chytil in his hockey career, but also his long-term kind of just health in general as well. And also, the other thing that I want to touch on in this kind of Dallas Stars game was the fact that, there was a very bad play, you could say, by K'Andre Miller that ended up leading to a direct goal that obviously was a pretty big part, you could say, in the New York Rangers 5-4 loss in overtime to the Dallas Stars. This is by no means the first time, even this season, where we have seen, some big kind of mistakes from K'Andre Miller, but head coach Peter Laviolette, decided to make the decision on not kind of benching him, which he kind of talked about a bit after the game as well. And at this point with K'Andre Miller, I just don't think it's going to work in New York. I just don't think it's going to work here. Maybe he gets traded away or kind of ends up leaving and walking away in free agency in a few seasons or something like that, and he ends up kind of blossoming into a really good kind of top 4 defenseman maybe for another team. But me personally, I just don't see it working out with the Rangers. I think at this point he needs to have a kind of fresh start somewhere else. And the kind of problem with that is, his value is just taking a hit after a hit after a hit with the way he's kind of playing. So it really does suck, because this was someone who at one point I think had quite a bit of value and definitely could have been used as a kind of big piece and maybe a trade for a kind of superstar. But now at this point, I think he'd be kind of a piece to go in alongside another couple pieces that are pretty big to kind of make a trade go through. I don't think he's going to be that kind of piece that really kind of, moves the needle there. I think he's just kind of one of those kind of throw-in pieces now, and not just kind of like a, 5th round pick in value, but it's not like he's got, a first round pick in value or anything more than that, that's for sure. So in my opinion, this really does suck as a Rangers fan, because one, we're seeing a player who is continuously kind of, helping this team lose games with the way he's been playing at moments, and also his trade value, where I have kind of wanted to see him traded away for a bit now. His value just keeps going down and down and down, I'm sure, which obviously does not help, actually get a trade done here. So overall, it's just not a great situation for the Rangers or K'Andre Miller. I do think a trade is what's best for K'Andre, but whether or not that happens because of his value dropping so much, that really is the kind of big question at this point. And now we'll take a look at the New York Rangers trade news/rumors that has been kind of floating around, involving the Rangers and the Canucks. But this kind of part of it is talking about whether or not the New York Rangers would have to give up, not necessarily Zibanejad in this deal, but possibly Alexis Lafreniere. And I never once thought from 1 second that, we were going to be able to trade Zibanejad 1-for-1 for JT Miller. But the kind of thought was, possibly using Zibanejad and his contract because he does, have the same expiry date on his contract as JT Miller does. He's making an extra $500K per season, so the contracts, match up fairly easily. Not too, hard to get, $500K from either team there. So a trade, the framework for it is kind of easily kind of done there with Zibanejad being in the deal. But the kind of talk that has kind of been floating around is maybe the Rangers might be putting in as that kind of, big salary piece there, Alexis Lafreniere instead of Mika Zibanejad. And, personally, if it is for JT Miller, I can definitely understand why the Vancouver Canucks would rather maybe someone like Alexis Lafreniere over Mika Zibanejad, but we also have seen some reports that maybe the Canucks are, kind of needing to get back a center in a trade for Elias Pettersson or JT Miller. We're kind of talking more on the Miller side of things there because I do think he is the more realistic kind of trade target for the Rangers. So, we'll have to wait and see, but whatever, I do think it makes sense that obviously that they would kind of need to get a center back there because, JT's been playing a bit of center. You've got Elias, who's another center. So, you trade away one of those top two guys, you very well would probably want one back in return. And I think that would make a lot of sense there. So having Mika Zibanejad be, that big contract and deal, and then have Mika Zibanejad alongside some other pieces, whether it's picks, prospects, NHLers, whatever it is, multiple of those, that could make a bit of sense there for both sides possibly where, they're getting that center back to replace JT Miller, let's say. The contracts match up pretty easily, and you're also getting back some other stuff as well. Maybe it's a K'Andre Miller, and I haven't talked about him too well in this video, but maybe it's a K'Andre Miller, a couple prospects and a pick or two or whatever it is. I don't know the exact framework, but that's kind of what I'm getting at here is I do think there is a possibility on where the Canucks would not accept Mika Zibanejad in a deal for JT Miller, even if he was maybe retained at, $1.5 million, and we gave some decent amount of value alongside Zibanejad to kind of help, take on that contract and also kind of make the value match up from both sides. So, it does make sense on why they'd want Alexis Lafreniere for sure. I mean, he's the younger kind of guy. He definitely has a lot more value than Zibanejad, and is also on a potentially very team-friendly contract as well. So it makes sense why they want Lafreniere, but it also makes a lot of sense on why the Rangers would not be really willing to even kind of talk about Lafreniere being in the deal, because I don't think the Canucks would probably be willing to do 1-for-1 Lafreniere for JT Miller. And if they're not willing to do that, and the Rangers have to add on a few more assets, that's where I'm really starting to think about, really not wanting that deal to kind of go through there, because, value-wise, I don't think Lafreniere should be too far off of JT Miller. I'm not saying Lafreniere right now is as good as JT Miller, but or even as valuable necessarily, but to me, with the way this Rangers team is kind of, playing right now, with the spot we're in as a team right this second, to me, trading away a guy like Alexis Lafreniere just does not make the most sense there, unless it is, a really good kind of value trade possibly for a superstar/star. That's the only way I'd be willing to trade away Lafreniere. And for JT Miller, I could make it work possibly and be okay with that, but in my opinion, if it has to be a bunch of other stuff added on as well, we're talking like a first-round pick plus, then I'm definitely not really looking to do that for JT Miller. Although, JT's a great player, and I definitely would like to see him on this Rangers team, and is, I think one of the better stars for sure that is, available. I mean, he has been talked about a ton in trade talks, and I definitely think, he or Elias Pettersson, one of them must be getting traded away. And with all the talk and the rumors about them kind of not getting along and all that kind of stuff there, you just have to imagine that something is going to happen here. One of these two are going to get traded away. Is it going to be JT? Is it going to be Elias? Is either one of them going to get moved to the Rangers? That is the big question that we have all to kind of talk about and kind of think about as well. But at the end of the day there, I just hope we see the Rangers make a trade this upcoming offseason for a superstar player just to kind of really, push this team forward and kind of get us back on track to possibly competing and hopefully winning a Stanley Cup in the very, very near future. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content. If you are a New York Rangers fan, there's no better place to be on YouTube than this channel. So definitely hit that like and subscribe button, as well as don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on this kind of trade situation here between the New York Rangers and the Vancouver Canucks, as well as your thoughts on the K'Andre Miller and Philip Hedl situation as well. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next one. Let's go Rangers.